Welcome to the SoilCraft Regen Agronomy Podcast. At SoilCraft, our mission is to innovate and lead in the field of regenerative agronomy, forging a path that empowers farmers to produce food that nourishes and heals both the planet and its inhabitants. Hey, welcome to the SoilCraft Regen Radio Podcast. This week, I'm in Washington with this guy, if you can believe it. This guy that hides behind the scenes, but is the main man, the man of action.
I like being behind the scenes.
So Craig's joining us from, where are you at this week, Craig? It's
Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Where's Craig this week? Chattanooga, you said?
Yep.
Chattanooga. Man, how hot is it down there right now?
Oh, I think it was like 105 and 200% humidity today.
Hey, today... this week in our podcast, we're going to talk about phosphate, specifically types of phosphate. And in this instance, we're going to talk about, we're going to lean on soil-applied phosphate, I think, because we can talk about, phosphorus is massive. Phosphorus is so important. It's required for ATP, adenosine triphosphate, energy, fatty acid bilayers, phospholipid fatty acid bilayers, and microorganisms like phosphorus, I think, is, even though it's in the NPKs, if you will, I think its role biologically often is overlooked, especially in agronomy. We look at nitrogen. We're so obsessed with nitrogen, its role in energy, but really, phosphorus, is more central to energy, other than, obviously, nitrogen plays a role in photosynthesis. But anyways, why? So what's the big deal? We know, okay, what are common forms of phosphate? We've got conventional forms and organic forms, right? We would say your typical conventional form would be MAP, mono-ammonium phosphate, right?
From a soil applied standpoint.
Some guys use liquid here, 1034O, polyammonium phosphate. There'll be decompound in Africa in various different blends, which will have different phosphates. There is superphosphates and hard rock phosphates and soft rock phosphate, which we want to talk about. Organically, phos acid. Mm-hmm. Not as usual in soil, but we use it that way. Mm-hmm. Organically would be chicken manure is always the top of the list, right, for organic phosphate, and various manures, compost, etc. But not all phosphates are equal, are they? When we look at building a nutrition profile for, crop nutrition profile for any crop, and you want to make sure you've got enough phosphorus. Obviously the first thing we do is, and we're going to look at the soil test, right? Mm-hmm. But not just, we like to look at what's soluble, and depending on your pH, but we're going to look at at least two or three different reports, whether we'll look at Bray, P1, P2, Olsen, Mehlich. So we like
the Morgan or the Lamont.
Morgan, yeah.
You can look at water soluble too, but usually a weak acid is more accurate.
So there's a lot of ways. Why do we do that? Why do we need multiple methods of viewing that phosphorus?
I think primarily because it's one of those things that is, I think, essentially in nature, it's made available through biology, through mycorrhizae, through fungi, as well as phosphorus solubilizing bacteria, because it has an affinity to tie to other things, especially calcium. And so a lot of times it's in the form of calcium phosphate. Even in an organic source like manure, right, or the natural source that's typically mined in the calcium, which is calcium phosphate, soft rock phosphate, which has it's in a colloidal form. So there's clays and other minerals, lots of silica, things like that. So essentially it takes, I can't remember your original question, but it takes microbial activity usually to render it available to the crop, to the plants themselves. So you were talking about availability. Why do we take multiple soil samples? And that's typically because if you're extracting with a standard lab analysis or I mean, usually we say, look at an Olsen extraction method if your pH is high, and if your pH is acidic, then you can look at the Bray extraction method. Those are kind of your standard P extractions from a lab analysis standpoint.
Because your Bray P1 is a strong acid. Yeah. I like looking at the two because I like to know, I feel like the Bray P1 is going to give you your bank account.
Yeah.
Your total phosphorus that you could possibly extract over time. And then, your Mehlich or Olsen is going to be more, but what might my crop that I'm planting today access? Mm-hmm. And so, because that might lead us to a different prescription. If we look at the soil and we have a very low Bray, we just don't have a bank account. And we need it for our crop, but we also need to think about whether we might want to build that bank versus, we've got a lot of Bray, but we don't have much available right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know when it comes to soils, if for instance, if I have a soil sample which is high in, let's say it's a high Bray, and that's what we're experiencing now, aren't we, Craig? At Riverside is for the first time ever we're experiencing high availability and high total P. And so in that instance, we say, well, we don't need anything. But let's say, for instance, you have a low Bray, so a low total bank, but adequate availability. Well, that means we need to be adding something over time, but we don't need it just now. And so then we'd want to go with something that has a lower availability and is going to release over time. Now, it's tough because, we might be tempted in any occasion, and I have been, to always apply phosphorus, because there's no question, if you've ever applied phosphorus, in a band, like or
MAP.
MAP to an early wheat, for instance, the results are amazing. The increase in tillering, root growth, etc., is astounding to have available phosphorus now. If you don't have available phosphorus, it will cost you. You'll pay the price. And so the challenge has always been for me, I want to put it on because I never want to be without. I can't afford to be without on early crop establishment, but you're paying the price. I know, Craig, you brought up a really cool graphic. I think we'll see if we can superimpose that on the podcast, but looking at the release over time of MAP versus something like a rock phosphate, mono-ammonium phosphate, which is available like immediately.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that, when you're talking about the perspective of dependence, two things come to mind. One, how available is the nutrient? And unlike nitrogen, there's not very good synthetic sources. Even things like MAP and stuff typically are going to have a fairly natural original source that is dependent on production. And so you see these discussions of limited availability, how much of that is never recovered because it ends up in the sewers of the world, those kind of things. So you have that factor, and then as a farmer, you have the whole factor of dependency from the standpoint of what you were saying. Hey, I don't have much in the bank, but it's available right now. Well, that might just mean you are an addict and you need to go get another hit from your local drug dealer because you're not having anything in the bank. So everything that you have is completely minerally bound or chemically bound at that point. And so you need something that's going to be available in the next 12 months. Well, that sounds like MAP, but it doesn't have to be that way. And, that whole tipping point, I want phosphorus, and in order for me to have long-term banks of phosphorus and get access to it, I need mycorrhiza to be active. But when I put down phosphorus that's very available, now a muscular mycorrhiza doesn't have relationships with plants anymore because the plants say, why do I need you? I'm getting a straight injection into the vein of MAP. And so when you're dealing with that whole, dependency cycle, maybe that MAP program where you're spiking high amounts of very available but very short-lived phosphate maybe isn't the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the times that I became a full fan of utilizing soft rock phosphate into my crop programs. We were working with a garlic producer, and we'd been using phos acid because it goes through a center pivot very well, good, clean, potent product. And we see
Carbon complex.
Carbon complex. And so when applied, you do a SAP analysis, 72 hours or so post, and you'll see the P numbers come right up, which is amazing. And that's what we wanted. But then I'd see my calcium available numbers drop. And I'm like, I need more calcium. So then we'd go out and apply, like aragonite through the pivot, micronized calcium, and wait a week later, 2 weeks later, take a sap, and boom, my calcium's up and my phosphorus is down. And so, you're back and forth, and finally I can't do this. Every time I get the desired response of one, I get the antagonist of the other. And that's when I got so fed up and started okay, I'm done. I'm using soft rock. I'm getting calcium and phosphorus. But that being said, these are in our crop programs where we're prioritizing, the paramount of all of our programs is biology. Yeah. And so I will say the asterisk to that is, you can't expect probably the same performance out of a soft rock phosphate if you're dealing with low OM dead soils where you're not applying biology, you're not maintaining soil residues, you don't have crop rotation, etc. You have dead soils and you're in a wet chemistry system, then you have to use water-based ions. But if you take that leap into regen and you prioritizing and treating that soil like for what it is, a living organism, and you start banking that and you think ahead. So instead of thinking about this crop, maybe you do initially, maybe you need to make the bank, okay, we've got a wheat crop in, we'll put down some MAP as a basal now, but we're also going to put soft rock phosphate in for the lion's share. So we have some available just now, or we do a fertigation to get some on just now. But then if we do our due diligence in this crop, and maybe we do it if we're rotating soybeans like we do, or another crop, or a fall program where we stockpile in the fall here, some soft rock and our soil vigor, a fall primer. By the time that spring crop is ready to plant here, or our next cash crop is ready, the P is cycling at a steady rate. You have a bank account full, the microbes are going, the availability is on demand. And that's what I'm shooting for. I think that's what we try to do, create a balanced system.
The key is soil biology when you're talking about mineral phosphate. And then the other important piece of this is longevity of release, which you can discuss that chart that you found, Craig, because I had an example with a grower. I've got two different examples. One that particularly sticks out to me. They were going to have a potato. They had a contract for potatoes, so they put fall pre-plant fertilizer, dry fertilizer, with potassium, phosphate, form of MAP, a bunch of different things. They took their soil sample, applied all this dry fertilizer, and then took a soil sample in the spring because they had their potato contract canceled. So they're like, oh no, we spent all this money, we put all this fertilizer on, now what are we going to do? Well, I guess we'll plant some beans. They took a soil sample, and there was not a lot to change from the fall before to that spring,
except for their bank account.
Exactly, the bank account. And then the beans didn't necessarily do that much better than any other time without all of that dry fertilizer they had spent that they thought they were going to put for those potatoes for the next year. And we still ended up having to, treat the beans as usual with some same fertility program. It wasn't like that big bulk expensive dry application basically showed nothing. And he was like, you've got to be kidding me. Where'd it go? Well, for one, it ties up because it's not bound to carbon. And then two, it leaches because it's not bound to carbon. And if there's not biology there to encapsulate that, metabolize it, hold it into stable forms like amino acids, which are Zwitter ionic, which means that they can hold them without allowing them to leach. Then it's not a good investment. And so when you utilize a more mineral-based phosphate in the form, either in a manure form, a bone form, or a natural, calcium soft rock phosphate form, then you get a slower release right up front, but it's already bound to carbon and silica and calcium, so you don't tie up more calcium in your system. You do actually stimulate and feed soil biology because they can mineralize and break that down. And if you have soil biology, you do get a release quicker than if you don't, but it doesn't tie up, it doesn't leach, and it hangs out there for years. I mean, I have one of our agronomists that works for us, used to work for us. His uncle has wheat fields he's farmed for decades, been putting on MAP, and they decided, we're going to do the soil health thing. We're going to cover crop, we're going to graze, and we're going to use soft rock phosphate and humates. And his phosphorus levels are going up so much farther. And the phosphorus levels in these fields before they started were low. And they've had MAP applications for literally decades. And their phosphate levels are still low.
Yeah.
And their calcium levels are low because it's tied up to calcium. And now they're seeing this natural organic form that's supposed to be not very available and a low phosphate P number when it comes to total lab, a lab analysis. Yet they're seeing crop response and soil response,
and
which is amazing.
I think that's
makes sense when you dig into the science.
I think that's a really big thing for people to highlight on. I know we're getting close to our timeout. Imagine that already. But, I've not been able to put any soft rock phosphate. I've wanted to for years, but it's not available in our country at this stage. Hopefully not for much longer. But what we found was exactly that. You apply it, you're struggling with biology, but as we began to fix the biological system, now we're seeing phosphate rise without applying. Well, what is that? That's legacy loads of phosphate. It's all that money we spent that a portion of it was available, damaging the biological system, and then disappearing, 6 to 12 months later, almost completely, is being able to be reused. So how many farms across the U.S., across Africa, across the world have legacy loads that can be tapped into? That's money you can get back that you spent out of your bank account. And like you're talking about those guys, they spent all that money on potatoes. Well, they could get that money back, but they have to fix their biology first. And over time, even things like MAP that binds up so much more quickly initially can be fixed. And so I liked your approach. What we always end up in is that hybrid model where let's use some of this and let's use some of that as we transition to doing all of the right thing. Yeah, sometimes you have to prop yourself up, but start doing the things that gets life back into the system. And so how can I get away from beating back my avascular mycorrhiza every year? Well, the answer is change what you do, but you still have to do an economic crop, so you have to wean yourself off that. And so to me, that's economically sound. I mean, what farmer doesn't want to go and find, an unclaimed cash account somewhere? Well, that's there. It's there on every acre you've got. If you've been applying phosphate at all, get your biology right, and it becomes available.
Yeah, that's good. And the strange thing, and unfortunately, I feel like when you talk about the unexplainable aspects in chemistry-based soil samples, because you look at it and you say, for years we see nothing. Yeah. Then we see something unbelievable, and we've changed what we're doing, but not in any fashion that you can explain with most of the tools that we have. And so, of course, the only framework that usually gets to, and then we get tomatoes thrown at us, is was it Caravan and biological transmutation. And you can't say that, and no, I can't prove it. And I can't prove what's happening, but it is miraculous and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The results that we're seeing are just not commensurate with the changes that we've made. I mean, and that's what I think is so exciting. But I do think that as we use principle approaches and systems based, honoring those systems, honoring the natural systems, then look, if you talk to a microbiologist and talk to them about what's possible just in microbial cell division, not to mention the power of those organisms. We know. I mean, the science shows they literally can create, at a microscopic level, nuclear colliders, etc. Like, that's known. So when we prioritize them and leverage them and we follow the systems and do our best to do that, what's cool, what I think is particularly amazing is so often when we make these changes, we can go out and observe the difference.
Yeah.
You can feel the difference, but you can't measure it. But this is a rare instance in which we're seeing things like phosphorus levels measured the old-fashioned way, appreciating in an unexplainable manner, and organic matter appreciating in an unexplainable manner. And that's cool, because so many of the things we do, it's like, you talk to the farmer, or you go out yourself or whatever, and you're like, I can feel it, I know it. But to see this change is amazing. But you do, like you said, Craig, you got to start making the change. You don't have to, don't change everything today and just flip the switch. Don't do that.
You can't.
But the cool thing is it comes faster than we thought. I mean, this year we didn't even put down on basil. We didn't have to, because we got there. It took us a couple years, but we're there. So be patient, give it a couple years, on in the system, and biology is OP.
Yeah, and I think that's for me the big thing is if you're willing to invest in your biology, to me it's like getting a supercomputer. You can do so many more calculations per second than you could before. Well, it's the same thing with availability. You've juiced the system that creates availability, but not only does it create availability, it's biologically chelated. So it's available but not toxic. So you can do things that are impossible in a chemistry-based system, but it's all chelated. It's all available but not toxic, and that's amazing to me.
And by the way, usually the side effects, or not effects, but it's calcium and silica applied with it. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
it's just amazing.
What's to dislike about that?
Soft rock phosphates and humates. I mean, that's your go-to for basil programs and crops, and our soil.
It's very rare. I should say almost 100% of the time that I look at a soil sample, at least in the desert where we live, that we don't need available phosphorus, calcium, carbon.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, I'm a broken record on almost
Yeah.
every soil test that I look at.
It needs.
And then it translates to sap analysis, what the plant's actually calling for too.
Yep.
But I wanted to also mention that it's not that, some of these more concentrated or, so to speak, synthetic forms of phosphate are all bad, because in nature, I think it's dose dependent. Mm-hmm. Ratio is really important, and what it's connected to. So, it's like, well, we do utilize, in a non-organic, system, we utilize phosphoric acid at very small rates, and they're always complexed with carbon, because that makes a big difference. And, I think particularly in foliar applications is where they stand out, that they work very, very well. I don't really like applying to the soil. Yeah. We do, and they do work, but there's still that calcium effect that it's going to tie up, it's going to react.
And it ties up because it becomes hard rock phos, which has been unavailable a long, long time.
Yeah, even if it's complex with carbon. But by complexing with fulvic acid and amino acids, bioflavonoids, things like that,
a longer curve,
in humates, it definitely curbs that reaction and increases its availability. But what I was going to mention with that is, even on a micro scale, microbes, phosphatase enzymes, different types of bacteria, in their process of breaking down phosphates in the soil, those metabolites react with hydrogen and actually do create acids. They do create very micro doses of phosphoric acid naturally. Mm-hmm. So it's not that those things are bad, but it's dose dependent.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyways,
so it's a great point. We better wrap it up. Imagine we went longer. Imagine with three of us. All right, thanks, guys. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next week with Regen Radio.
And watch for the soft rock phosphate. I'm about to order my load soon. So
that's right. Thanks. Yeah, in Zambia, Lord willing, we'll get our import permit within this week. So yeah.
Next time we should talk about how you got your phosphorus levels to come up without applying phosphate.
Yeah. Well, we did apply phosphate.
People are
just MIP over time.
How did you do that?
Okay.
We'll do it.
Maybe that's next week.
Sounds good.
Next
All
week.
Right, thanks. Thanks so much for joining us. as we expand our paradigms and explore what's possible in the realm of regen agronomy. If you would like to contact us or learn more about what we do, please visit our website at www.soilcraft.com, as well as our YouTube channel. If you have topics you would like us to unpack or stories, please connect with us so that we can share them with others.